Alright, so in this video, we will be building this Cinewhoop together. This is a 2.5-inch Cinewhoop that is basically perfect size for most of the scenarios. You can fly this indoor, you can fly this outdoor. This Cinewhoop features a built-in 4K filming capability with the DJI O3 system, and is compatible with almost every DJI goggles from the V2 to the Goggles 3. It includes the Express ELRS receiver, allowing you to use it with nearly any popular ELRS radio on the market. It also has a nicely designed frame that is packed with a lot of features. So basically a very innovative design that so far this is the nicest frame, 2.5-inch Cinewhoop frame that I have ever seen. And best of all, it has LED built in. You can see that it has a LED that is including in the package. Yeah, very nice. All right, so without further ado, let's get going to the building process. Alright, so since Speedybee is actually sponsoring the parts for this video, so the frame we will be using is going to be the BEE25 Pro frame. Alright, so let's leave it aside. And the flight controller is going to be the all-new release, Speedybee F4AIO. So you can see that this is going to be a really nice package that everything is packed in one. You even got like a little practice board if you're just not confident with like the soldering just for now. Alright, so let's put it away as well. Next, let's look at the motors. So the motors, yeah, still Speedybee motors, and this is going to be the Speedybee 1404, and this is going to be this 46,000 kV motor. So this is going to be perfect for your, like, if you're trying to build like a 2.5-inch, the 46,000 kV, I think is just perfect for it. All right, so next let's look at the RX. So the RX, I'm just going to be using the Happy model. Like this is going to be the EP2 RX, so you can get this from anywhere. This is not Speedybee brand, but yeah, this is just something that is very convenient that you don't have an antenna. And since like I'm not planning to go low range on this, so I will assume that this little tower antenna should give me sufficient range for my real estate flights. Like basically I always use this to kind of save my cable management. But all right, let's just leave it aside right here. And as for the VTX, we're going to be using the Polar Vista kit. All right, so around halfway of installing, I actually decided to use the O3 Air unit instead of the Polar Vista kit. The reason behind is that this frame is dedicated built for the O3 system, and if you don't use the O3, it's kind of like defeating the purpose and like kind of like disregarding the goodwill of Speedybee. So I decided to just switch to O3 Air unit, and also this is going to be a lot easier to install compared to this one because you do need a lot of like adapters with like this and that in order to get this installed. So for the VTX for the Speedybee 25, we're actually going to be using the O3 Air unit in this video. All right, so let's continue. All right, so first thing first, let's look at the frame. So the frame, basically, obviously I already opened it because I need to dry fit it to show you how it works. So this is probably one of the most easiest frame that you can get on the market right now. There's not a lot of pieces. Most of the pieces are going to be in big pieces in the sense that there's only like countable pieces in there. There's not like little details that you have to like have a very detailed instruction to install. Yeah, so basically this is going to be very good, but this is not the most unique part of the Speedybee 25 frame. What does make it unique is actually this PCB board. This is going to be an extension board for you to extend from your flight controller, so you do not need to physically open the drone right now to connect a lot of stuff. So the most important thing is you will be able to run your power leads basically from your flight controller to solder to this board, and then you can plug in your battery right here. So this is just basically your plug, so you do not have to connect a external XT60. And another important thing is that you will be able to extend your USB-C cable or your USB cable that is on your flight controller. You basically plug in the USB right there and then plug it in right here, and then basically you will be able to use the external like right here, so to just connect to your computer to do the setups. So very convenient that you do not have to remove the frame again, because that is the most thing that I hate when I'm dealing with Cinewhoops, because most of the case you will have to like disassemble the frame in order to get to the USB to just to tweak a little bit setups. And another important thing is that you will be able to use this port, and it's kind of like addition to the board is that you will be able to plug in the LED strips just right from here, so you do not have to solder from the flight controller just again. All right, so basically that's about how we're going to be like. Okay, so basically that's about it for like the bulk of the part of the frame. Since we're going to be installing, I'm not going into details of each of the parts right now. Let's actually bring out the flight controller so we can actually explain how the wiring is going to go between the flight controller and this board. All right, so the flight controller that we will be using, as mentioned, is going to be the Speedybee F405, and this is going to be the AIO. I believe this is F405, right? Yeah, but anyway, so yeah, F405. So this is going to be another masterpiece of the Speedybee product that you can see that is well constructed and basically very affordable priced. All right, so if you're using the same company product, it's just probably going to be most relevant and it's going to be most easy for you to get them connected together. So let's basically explain a little bit on how we're going to do the wiring. So basically the extension board goes here. It's going to be like that. So you will be able to plug in. This is going to be your top side of the frame. And then you plug in the battery right here, and then let's move it over, and then your like flight controller, you probably have to mount it upside down, because in order for you to get to the power leads or whatever, you will have to do that. All right, so you're just basically mount it like this, so you can see that your power, basically your input of the plus and minus, is going to be right here. You're going to solder the plus to the plus and minus to the minus. And then you will be able to have an additional cable. Okay, so what you're going to do is basically for this one, we have a USB-C. So we will be using the USB-C to plug it in right here. And another side, you use this kind of cable to connect it to plug into this little piece right here. Additionally, there's one thing I forgot to mention. And since this board actually has a boot button pad that you can solder to, so right here, you can see that there is a boot button. You will be able to connect this cable, just run a little cable out here and solder to this PCB board. There's going to be a boot button right here. So you will be able to boot up even your FC using this particular board. So very, very convenient that you do not have to remove your stuff to actually get into the flight controller to get the setup done. All right, let's actually begin the installation. What you wanted to do is you're going to bring your soldering iron, and then you're going to place it onto the pad itself, just to kind of heat it up, and then at the same time feed the solder on top of it. And since my soldering tin already has flux built into it, so I'm not going to apply additional flux, so not too much, just a little bit. So the goal is just to hold the cable right there. Okay. You can fix it later. Same drill, put it on the hot plate, put it on the plate, and then start feeding the solder into it. Okay. Right, not the best job, but let's actually fix it a little bit. Okay, so next let's actually bring out these two little cables from the package. Okay, so since these two little cables are already pre-tinned, there's nothing that we have to do to tin it, so you can just basically start the connection like that. Okay, so basically this is how it's going to look like after you have connected. So after this is done, we can basically put it back to the frame just so we can drive it back. Okay, so the next thing, since we already have removed it, let's actually go. We're going to install the boot button right here. So you can see that there's a BOT and there's going to be a boot here. So this one, I don't think they actually included a cable. So you can just grab a cable that is sitting around, whatever, that is basically small enough that you can go get it. So same drill. So boot pad connected. Alright, so let's actually dry fit it onto the frame just to make sure it actually works. Put two screws in here just so we can kind of secure it. You're actually going to bring out the USB-C cable, and then you're actually going to bring out this cable that is coming with the Pro package. So this package will allow you to connect and extend your USB-C from the flight controller to the extension board. Okay. So the connection is basically like that. Just make sure that the red goes to red and yellow goes to yellow. So very simple. The next step, you're basically just going to plug it in right here. And then the next part goes right here. Oh, it's kind of hard to. Alright, sorry guys, we will have to remove this again, so we will be able to plug it in. So ground is that side, so make sure that the black side is facing that way. We won't be able to plug it in on the other side anyway, so it should be very dump proof. But let's see. Alright, so once you have connected the cable, and if you got the Pro edition of the BE25, you're going to see that you're getting extra 2 cables dangling out like this. So this is actually for you to connect to your one of the TX and RX pads on your flight controller, so you will be able to actually use Bluetooth function. So you can, just don't need to require you to connect to this USB-C cable physically, and you can just basically set everything on the Speedybee app. So basically what this one does is we're just going to define a pad that we can use, and probably for easier connection wise, and basically after I read the manual, we could use the T5 and R5 since we're probably just not going to be installing a GPS. So T5 R5 is going to be right here. So just remember that all connections of any external equipments are generally going to be the same. When you're connecting TX and RX pads together, the RX and TX has to reverse. So RX on here goes to the TX on here. So TX on here goes to RX on here. For this one, the green cable is going to be the RX on the PCB board, the extension, and the blue one is going to be the TX. So we have to reverse it when connecting here. All right, let's tin these 2 pads right now. Okay, so we are done. Okay, so the next thing we're actually going to be installing is going to be the capacitor. So this is going to be something that is important for you if you wanted to run batteries. It's just going to stabilize the voltage for, basically for stuff to perform better and for them to live a little bit longer. So for the Speedybee, it's just so simple. All you need to do is install the capacitor right here, so you do not have to worry about where do you tuck this. They basically thought it for you, so you just put it right here. So basically this is the exact location we're going to be putting the capacitor. Okay, so first thing first, we're just basically going to be cutting the capacitor, the cable, just a little bit so we can make it fit perfectly at the place we want it to go. Let's double check. So basically the minus sign goes to the black cable as the minus location. Okay, so it's still a little bit too long, so we wanted to kind of cut it a little bit shorter. Okay, so this one can be a little bit longer, but this one has to be shorter. Okay, so let's just cut it like that, so we can kind of bend it later. So to install it, you're going to just gently put it right here. We just melt the solder so the cable actually just sticks to the pads. Same thing on the other side of it. Should be good enough. Alright, so once the capacitor has been installed, the hardest part of this this installation is generally done, because these are the more challenging stuff that we needed to connect. Okay, so let's give it a quick power test. You're going to bring out a short savior. So if you don't know what short savior is basically this is a device, a PCB board, that when you plug it in and you plug in the LiPo on the other side, and when you power it on, if something is shorting, this board is going to give you a red light to indicate something is wrong, and it's just going to prevent you from burning your equipment. So very good investment, only 10 bucks. So if you wanted to check it out, it's going to be down below. Buy anything, buy any brand, it's generally going to give you the same result. Right, so let's plug it in like here. And the other side, we're going to plug in a LiPo. So we're going to be using a 4S LiPo from G&B. Okay. So what we wanted to make sure that is it's actually powering up. So okay, let's press the power right here. Okay, you can see that we're getting power up light and it's green. So basically this is a good soldering application. So yeah, so I guess everything is fine. Okay, so once we're done with the power cable installation, the next thing we're going to do is going to be the motors. So I like these Speedybee motors. They're actually packaging quite nice in little boxes, which I don't know. Alright, so very simple. At the same time, we're just going to remove everything out from it. So this Speedybee 46,000 kV is going to be pretty good for 4S powertrain. So since like I run my Cinewhoop generally on 4Ss, yeah, so this is just going to be perfectly fine. Okay, now let's actually get the motors. So the motors to install is pretty simple for this part. Okay, these are actually super thin wires, pretty good. Alright, so what you have to do is just dry fit it right here and line it up with the holes, and then we're going to pick up the shorter screws with this particular frame, put it in like that. Use a screwdriver. Okay, right, that example. Don't use an electric screwdriver. I'm just getting lazy, so I just, yeah. Alright, so what you have to do is just basically screw it in like that. So once you have the first two in, it should be pretty simple. If you're using the electric screwdriver, just to make sure you do not over tighten them. Okay, so basically right now you can see that we are done with the installation. So the next step is going to be, we're going to physically connect these wires to the flight controller ESC. So to get these wires installed, the first thing we have to do is, since like these are too long, right? So we will have to physically pull them to the paths that we're going to be doing, and then we're just physically going to be like cutting them short, so it can be like a more perfect fit instead of like such a long. Just make sure when you're cutting it, just make sure you always cut longer, just so you will have something. Otherwise you will have to like try to find a way to like extend the wire. That's going to be a lot of hassle. So to do it, all you have to do is just like kind of like straighten it to the pads right there, and then you're going to grab a little tweezer. Okay, we're going to leave a little bit extra just so we will have some room to make mistakes. Okay, same drill, pull it right there. Okay, then do the same thing, cut it. All right, same drill, pull it right there. And then cut it. Okay. All right, so once you have cut your wires to the size, basically the length, the next thing we're going to be taking out is going to be a wire stripper. So you have to strip it, otherwise you will have nothing to solder it with. So it's very simple. All you have to do is to like bring your wires up like that. You're basically just going to cut a little bit lead out. Just cut it like that. And, yep. You see that? Yeah. We have a little bit just pointing out, and that should be sufficient. Same drill for this one. For this particular motor, I think these wires are super thin. Okay. Okay, so now we have to complete the installation, and the next step, basically we're just going to try to hide these cables and make it like kind of like uniform so it doesn't like look messy. Just going to kind of like put it in one side just for now, and later on we will be able to use a zip tie just to kind of like tie it up so it doesn't like show up. Okay, so once we're done with that, the next step, we're actually going to be installing the EXT receiver. Okay, so the receiver that we will be using is going to be the heavy model EP2. So to connect the ELRS receiver, the procedure is about the same. You're going to connect a 5-volt pad, a ground pad, a TX, and a RX. So same drill, 5-volt goes to 5-volt, ground goes to ground, and TX goes to RX, and RX goes to TX. So same thing. All right, so after the receiver, let's look at the flight controller and the particular pads that we're actually going to be using for this one. All right, so what we're going to be soldering is going to be the ground pad right here. We're going to solder the 4V5 volt pad. Basically, this will allow the receiver to be powered on using just the USB power. And we're going to solder to R6 and T6, so basically UR6. All right, so next we're going to actually switch back to the EXT receiver. So for this particular receiver, there is no wiring diagram. Basically, it doesn't tell you like which pad is what. So basically just look at the screen and just basically follow it as is. So actually we have to probably revert it like this so it's easier to understand, but since all my solders are in the front, I'm sorry, but you probably will just have to remember. All right, so the first one is going to be ground. So ground, we always are going to be using the black cable. All right, the next one is going to be the 5-volt pad, which is going to be red as usual. So here's the tricky part. So that one is going to be TX, so we're going to be using the yellow cable. The last one is going to be the RX cable. Done. All right, so we're switching the scene to the flight controller, and we're basically going to be soldering these cable onto the flight controller itself. Okay, so since like our pads are like layout like the TX and the RX are like in there right there, so it's easier for us to get that these two first. Okay, so for this one it's going to be RX, so RX will have to go to the TX, so which means it's just going to be that one. Perfect. Okay, good solid joint, and then this one is going to be the RX. This one's actually going to be the TX, and we need to connect to the RX, which is going to be that one. All right. Next are the two easy ones. So red 5-volt to 5-volt, actually 4V5. This is going to be 4V5 pad right there. Ground pad. All right. So the connection of the EXT receiver is completed. Okay, now we can remove it from the clamp. We'll just put the clamp away, as we probably won't need it for a while. And then let's just kind of starting twisting the cable so it's easier to put away. Okay, so the next step, we're actually just going to be putting this little heat shrink on top of the receiver so we can get a little bit more protection, prevent it from like moisture going in or something. Okay, so let's leave it here. We're gonna bring out a heater gun just so we can like shrink the heat shrinks. Okay, so just so I don't accidentally screw up my mat, I'm just gonna use a little wood board as a base. All right, so just use like a really low temperature and it should like shrink this thing already. All right, that's it. Okay, actually before we install the frame on top of this thing, you're gonna actually install some of the, this is called the battery strap holder, otherwise you won't be able to get it back later when after the frame was secured. We put it on top here. I think it should be running like that. Okay, and then the next step, we're going to just be securing it with the M2 screws. Okay, done. Okay, so next thing, we're going to be installing the bottom plate. Okay, so the bottom plate is going to be something that is pretty nice design for receivers. So it does have a little place that you will be able to hold the receiver at, and then basically you can run your like cables, like your antennas, out directly from here or like from here or something. This is probably for the smaller ones, this is for the bigger ones. So but since we do not have like an external antenna, we're just going to be mounting this on top of the receiver. Let's just use like a little 3M like little pad, sticky pad tape. Okay, and then next up, just close it up like that, and basically our most of the stuff is done. So still, let's Alright, so basically that's the bottom plate and it's done. Let's flip it to the back, and next we're actually going to be installing the DJI O3 air unit. Basically, let's open our O3 air unit. So this unit has already been pre-activated and it's open boxed. Okay. So this one should be just a plug and play, and there should not be any stuff that you need to do in order to get it working. Okay, so let's move the box. Let's just put the box right here. So we're not going to need that for a while, and this is another unique design for the Speedybee, is that you basically mount everything in this little bracket right here. So the first thing first, we do have to change the antenna, because for this particular frame it is suggesting that we use the small like linear antenna instead of those kind of like directional antennas. And you're going to basically use these antenna that is coming with the O3, coming with the BEE25 frame. And we'll just basically install it. Then we're just going to screw this thing back. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that this frame actually came with 2 screwdrivers, so I decided to just use it since it's going to be in the package. So yeah, very thoughtful that normally you don't get like this kind of good screwdrivers in like a frame kit. You just get like a little small little thingy thing, and it just doesn't work. Okay, and then the next thing, I believe this is how we're going to install it, is you basically just slide this thing in like that. Actually, no. I'm going to require to remove the screws right here. Okay, so once the antenna has been replaced, you're basically gonna bring out this cage. And this is the main reason why I say this frame was designed for the O3 air units, because this thing was just molded for the O3 air unit. So what you have to do is, you probably will have to, let me see, so let's get the antenna out from here, because I think this is what the instruction want us to do, is by, we're gonna have to separate the antenna like this. Alright, so you can see that it is a perfect fit, and if you wanted to install a Vista to this, you do have to print some like basically adapters, and that's something that I don't want to do in this video because probably it's going to be too confusing for everybody. Okay, so once we basically have put this in here, you're going to have to come to get this M1.6 6mm screws that you will be able to secure the camera with. Okay, so once we're done with that, the next thing we are going to install the camera. So to get the camera, you do have to have these little like damping pads. Yep, this is going to come with the kit as well, so very simple, very simple. Okay, so to secure the O3 air unit from the damping pads, you do need to bring out this M26 in order to get it like secure. So otherwise, the original one is not going to work. Okay, so we need about 4 of them. So this this is the one size we want. Okay, let's put the cable inside and we will be able to adjust this little like camera. Okay, perfect. Okay, so the next step, we're actually going to be installing the antenna. So basically the antenna this time is going to be very different from previous builds that we did before. So you're going to like kind of utilize this frame of the design, you probably just have to use whatever they provide. So basically you can see that this antenna mount is going to allow you to like mount the antenna like this. And as for the screws, you do have to use those kind of special screws. It's going to be the M1.6 4mm screws. Okay, so let's get another one. So this, I don't know why they have a different design, but it's a different size. So this one on the top, you're gonna get that one. Oh, so actually, because I think I found the reason, because these are the ones. So later on, we're gonna secure these to these actually 4 locations, and I believe these are just going to be going onto the frame directly. Okay, so after we're done with this one, we're actually going to have to remove this frame in order to like connect the cable. Actually, we probably will be able to get by. So you can see that the cable is right here. And this is where we have to get to in order to install it. But yeah, just for clarity purpose, let's actually remove it, since we also have to replace these screws, because I just found out they are actually that you're supposed to use those kind of like flatter, those kind of like pivot ones instead of this kind of flat heads. Okay. Okay. So remember, these are going to be, you're actually going to be using, let me see, to secure the flight controller, you're actually going to be using these. Actually, because I don't see this one coming in with the original flight controller package, so I actually used the one that came with the flight controller, but later on discovered that this is going to be better because they have countersunks, so you can use these to fix it. And then as for the ones, the nuts on the top, you could actually use these instead. Okay, so once the frame has been removed, we're basically going to be plugging in the cable right here. This is going to be our O3 ready cable plug, so you can just basically plug it in without having to worry much. Okay. So when you're plugging in those kind of cables, just always make sure that your like ground and your hot is also just on the right location. Otherwise, yeah, you're just gonna have a problem later on. Okay, let's just fit it back. Okay, let's basically let's basically try to fit this thing back to the location that it's supposed to be. Alright, after we have dry fit this back in, so you can see they're super simple. The screw that you're actually going to use the M28s, because like this frame, basically you have to use whatever that is designed to be used, otherwise it's just going to give you a lot of headaches. Oh, wrong screwdriver. Okay. So you're just basically going to be securing this one. Okay. Let's flip it aside so you can see it. So right here. Alright, so you can see that this is basically 99% that is complete, but there's something that we forgot, is we forgot to add the LED strips. And in order to get the LED strips, we're going to need the plug right here. And to get this plug, we do have to remove basically the top frame, everything again, so we can get to the LED strip. So let's get to it. Then you're basically just going to be taking out the LED strip. Probably this one has to come in from here. And you are just basically going to be plugging it in. Super simple, like that. And then you will be able to start like, so let's come this side. Okay. Before we actually start like putting it together, I think we should at least secure the frame so it doesn't like dangle around. Let's make sure no other wires, nothing it's in. I think it's been like okay, so LED is done, and I believe after we just cover up this, we should be done. You can see that this is going to be a little GPS cover, but we don't have a GPS, so it doesn't matter. All right. So basically you can see that our Speedybee BE25 has been completed installation. So the next step, we're actually going to be going into our computer so we can actually finish the setup. All right, I'll see you there. All right, so we're basically switching the side to the computer desk, and what we're actually going to be doing right now is we are going to let the flight controller know that what exactly we are connecting to each port. So it currently doesn't know what is receiver, it doesn't know what is VTX. So what we're trying to do is we're just going to set it up in the BetaFlight system. So basically the flight controller is aware what is connected to it. And the way of connecting is you're just going to be plugging in the USB-C cable on the back. So it's very simple. That this frame was really thoughtful that you don't have to remove any screws. Okay, so once you have connected to the flight controller, basically it should power up like that. You can see that there is going to be power in the little like thing. All right, okay, let's flip it back and let's actually switch our view to the computer. So at our computer, I will want you to go to the BetaFlight configurator software. If you do not have the BetaFlight configurator, below is just going to be a download link that you can just go download it. You will require this to set up most of your like current FPV drones. Like most of the market is actually using this BetaFlight software. So once you are basically first connect, once you have a successful connection, you're going to see that you're going to have some sort of thing, and then you're just going to hit connect. So once you have connected BetaFlight, so this is the thing that you're going to see, but we could set it up manually, completely just step by step to activate each step of the product, flip the board whatsoever. But since we're using the exact same parts from the BE25 binding flight version, so basically the ready to fly drone that Speedybee sold, but we're just building it. We can just use the original CLI file dump and just load the CLI dump into it, and then basically it's going to work. So the CLI dump can be found on Oscar Leung's website. Basically you can see that this is Oscar Leung's into FPV forum, and all you have to do is just to come to this website, and then you can just copy it. And then we're going to go to the bottom at the CLI tab, and then you're going to paste it. And once you are done, just type in save and then press enter, and everything should be loaded. And once it has been repowered on, you can see that everything has been enabled for you. So we have connected our O3 to MSP3, so the plug is correct. Serial RX is also correct. This is where we actually solder our receiver, and you can see that the board currently has been flipped upside down for you, so you don't have to do it. Okay, so and good part of it is you already have the original Speedybee tuning, so which is good that you don't have to adjust much, and yeah, everything has been enabled. So what we have to do is probably just have to adjust the modes tab just to fit our radio just a little bit more. But before we actually do this, we're actually going to require to connect our receiver to the radio first. So let's actually do that. All right, next we're actually going to be setting up the ExpressLS receiver so it can bind to our radio. So before we actually begin, there is going to be an important rule that you always have to know, which is ExpressLS binding requires you to have the same firmware on both your devices. So your radio and your drone must have to have the same ExpressLS firmware. So currently, the firmware versions that you have to have is going to be ExpressLS 3.x. So by saying so, the radio firmware can be on ExpressLS 3.1 and the drone firmware can be on ExpressLS 3.2, and they are still considered the same firmware. Okay, so as long as it starts with the 3, they're going to be the same. All right, so with this rule out of the way, let's actually talk about how we can get this binded together. So there is going to be 2 binding methods for this particular receiver. This is going to be a serial-based ELRS receiver. So the way of binding is you will be able to use the plug and unplug method, which we often refer to as the cheat method. So what you're going to basically do is just to plug and unplug the drone like this, 2, 3, and 4. You plug it in all the way. And this is basically going to be forcing the receiver into binding mode. And all you have to do is going to hit the bind button at the radio, and basically they should be binding together at the time. All right, so that's the cheat method, but that's not going to be the recommended method because that is not going to be good for the long run. So for the long run, I would still suggest to set up a binding phrase. So to set up a binding phrase is pretty simple. All you have to do is set up a series of code on your radio, and also the same code has to be set up on your drone as well. And once you have the same firmware and you have the code set up, they're just going to automatically going to bind together when you just power up both devices. So that's how binding phrase works. So I already set up my binding phrase for the radio, so I'm not going to do it in this video. So if you're interested and wanted to know how to set up a binding phrase for the radio, links are going to be down below. And we're actually going to be setting up the binding phrase for the drone. To set up the drone, you will have to find a way to power up your receiver. So for this particular flight controller, you will be able to power up the receiver by using the USB-C cable. So all you have to do is just plug it in. And you can see that the receiver right now is start blinking like that. Since to set up a binding phrase, the easiest method is still via Wi-Fi, because if you wanted to flash it via BetaFlight pass-through, there's just going to be a lot of things that could go wrong, and this is still the easiest. So what we're trying to do right now is we're just going to be waiting for the receiver to go into Wi-Fi mode, and basically after 30 seconds it should automatically go to the Wi-Fi mode. Okay, you can see now that the receiver is becoming like a really rapid flashing, and that's going to be an indication that it's on Wi-Fi mode. And what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be switching the view to the computer. So you're going to go to your Wi-Fi icon, and you should be able to see the ExpressLS RX right here. So you're just going to hit connect. Okay, so what we're actually doing is just waiting for this web page to pop out. So you can see that this is going to be the place where we can set up the ExpressLS. It's kind of like a Windows that you can just set up most of the stuff right here. So if this doesn't pop out for you, just make sure you just wanted to enter this particular web address in your browser, and it should be able to bring you to this page. So what we can see right here, this Happy Model EP1 receiver is already on firmware version 3.0.1. So this is still considered ExpressLS 3.x, so pretty good. So it's going to bind with our radio. So to set up a binding phrase, we're just going to set it up right here. And my binding phrase for the radio is also 654321. So we can just basically set it up like this. And once you're done, you can just hit save and reboot. Your receiver might be a little bit different if you're actually connecting a different receiver, but the setup it's going to be the same. Basically, the function, like the way of setting up, should be like similar. Okay, so once the save and reboot button has been hit, basically this is going to be set up already. So what we can do is just kind of remove the cable to like power off the receiver, and then plug it back in to like kind of like update it, just so we can kind of like flash it in a sense, just like update itself. And next we're actually going to be opening up the radio so we can continue the setup. Okay, so essentially what we're trying to wait is for the radio to actually connect to it, and once it's connected, the blinking should be solid, not blinking anymore. So there are some additional stuff we might have to do to this particular radio, but let's just check. So model matching is off, which is good. Okay, so you can see that the light right now turns solid, so this is an indication that it's bounded already. The next method to check is actually, we're going back to BetaFlight and we are going to set up the modes tab. Switching the view back to computer, so we're going to go back to BetaFlight. Okay. So at BetaFlight, you're going to go to the receiver tab. So a way of checking to see if you actually have a successful bind is to just move your sticks around to see if you're actually getting any movements. So at this stage, you want to make sure your throttle is throttle, your yaw is yaw, and you want to make sure your pitch is pitch, and your roll is roll. So yeah, basically, if this is correct, it should be working directly. All right, so let's actually go to set up the modes tab. So this is going to be the default for the BE25 that if you got the bind and fly version, but since our channel, it's going to be a little bit different, so we're actually going to modify it. So our arm switch is going to be this one. This is my aux1, aux2, aux3, and aux4. So in order to adjust it, so what you can do is you can just basically switch it to auto right here, and you flip the switch you wanted to use. You can see that the yellow dot is going to the bars, and this is going to arm our quad. Okay, so for the modes tab, we're actually going to be adjusting it here. Let me see. So for the modes tab, we're actually going to adjust to auto as well. I wanted to adjust it to 2 because this is what I'm used to. Okay, so for angle mode, we're actually going to be pulling it right here because yeah, this whole bar is right there. It's just not operatable. And since we have a 3-way switch, we're also going to be adding a horizon, and same, we're also going to be putting on auto, and we're going to flip the switch. You can see that in the middle, we're going to get horizon. So basically at the original stick location, you're going to get angle mode, middle is going to be horizon, and on top is going to be your acro mode. Okay, so for the beeper, we're actually going to be setting up as number 3 because this is not why. This is my number 3, so we can just set it up like that. You can see that this is going to activate the beeper if we switch it to the top. As for the LED, right now it's going to be 4, so yeah, that is okay. So there's no more switch that we needed to set up, and it should be basically, if you do not want to set up the beeper and you do not want to set up the LED, this should be more than sufficient enough for you to operate. So for the beeper, I don't know if we actually have a beeper on this thing because this is going to be the default setting, but we can check later. All right, so once we are done, just hit save. All right, so basically this is how you can bind your radio to the drone. And now let's actually go back to the bench, and we're going to be connecting the DJI receiver, a DJI VTX to our, we're going to be connecting. All right, so basically this is how you should be connecting your radio to your drone. And the next step, we're actually going to be connecting the DJI O3 system to our goggles. All right, let's head back to the bench. All right, so we're basically back to the bench, and to bind to our goggles, basically you will have to still go and activate the DJI Air unit and basically do all the process, but that's not going to be something that we will be showing in this video. For the step-by-step process, there's going to be a link down below, so you can just go check it out. Yeah, so for the video, if it's going to be available, it's going to be right there. All right, so to get your DJI O3 binded to your goggles for the first time, obviously you have to make sure that your firmware matches actually. So to get the DJI O3 system binded to the goggles, all you have to do is make sure your goggles is currently at O3 mode right now. And we're going to power up the goggles. What you have to do is you have to hit the bind button on this thing. So currently the bind button is going to be right at the bottom right here. So if you're using the same mounting, you can see that there is going to be a little bind button right here. So you just have to hit it with a small little tweezer. Just use a little tweezer, kind of hit it like this. Okay, you can see that it's blinking red, right? And at the second place that we're actually going to be hitting is going to be the bind button at the goggles. Just make sure you hear the beep sound. And you can see that we're actually getting footage, and this is basically how you can bind this to your your goggles. All right, so basically that's about it for the O3. Let's actually unplug it. Actually going to bring on the radio just to give it a quick motor spin test so we can know basically if everything is working. All right, so we're just going to bring the radio out and put it at the side. Okay, and we're going to plug in the battery again. Okay, so something's definitely wrong with my LED. You can see that only half is lighting up, so I don't know what's going wrong with this one. Probably, I don't know if it's my setup or something, but it seems that there is something wrong with this one. Okay, so there's a switch warning. Okay. All right, so if we flip the arm switch right here on the top, you can see like right here, if we flip the switch, theoretically the motor should start spinning. Okay, that's a good thing. And basically this is going to change the mode. And number 3 is actually going to be our beeper. Okay, so this does work. Okay, so this one, the LED, I don't think it's doing anything at the moment, so but it's fine. All right, so basically we can just basically install the props onto this thing and we should be able to get it go flying. All right, so for the LED strip issues, I later contacted Speedybee and discovered that I received the faulty one because no matter how many firmware I flash, no matter how I fix it, it just doesn't work. So they sent me a new replacement and I basically just put it in again and you can see that it is lighting up properly. So yep, this is a thing that if this happened to you, you should contact Speedybee to get help. All right, so let's go back to the main build. All right, so currently we're just going to be in the last step. We're going to be mounting some props on top of it. So the props that we will be using for this particular build is going to be the Gemfan 65mm ones. So these are the 5-bladed props. I really like to use these for my Cinewhoops because yeah, it generally gives you a more steady flight, that sort of ish flight when you're trying to like do kind of hover type of flights. So which is better. Okay, so right now, basically this is going to be, the motors are going to be sitting in like the props in format, right? So just make sure that you're going to mount the higher facing side inner. So basically that's going to let the thing spin the correct way. All right, so basically this is going to be like this. So we're going to mount it right here and this one goes right here. So since this is also going to be a pusher format, just make sure that your propellers, the top side is always facing up. That's something that you wanted to pay attention because you don't want it to flip it upside down. That's not going to allow you to fly. Okay, so this one goes over here and this one goes over here. Okay, next let's flip it over. Let's actually add on some screws to secure it. So for the screws that you should be using should be the M2 7mm. That should be coming with the package as well. So we're just going to dump this thing out. So 6 should be sufficient enough, but just dump everything out. Make it easier. All right, so basically we are done with the prop installation. Let's actually plug in a battery and let's do a quick hover test. All right, so switching the scene to my front yard, we're actually going to be test flying the BE25 for the first time. And this tuning right now, it's going to be the Speedybee default tune. We're also going to be seeing how it actually performs. As for the battery wise, we will be using the Tattu 850 4S battery because you can see that this one is actually fitting perfectly for this particular frame. There are going to be some limitation for this particular frame because of the size between the battery plugs and basically the camera mount. You can only fit a certain type of batteries into this one. So the Tattu 850 is just going to fit right in the sense. It's still going to be a little like, you're going to get a little gap between, but it should be fine. All right, let's basically plug it in. Let's give it a go. Alright, so the footage you're seeing right now is recorded on the O3 system SD card at 4K 60 frame in decent-alike. I stabilized it using GyroFlow and added some LUTs for color grading purpose. As usual, the O3 footage is going to be good enough for most social media contents. As you can see, it does look quite nice. However, after I filmed this video, DJI just released a brand new O4 system, which the footage quality is on another level compared to the O3. It's leaning towards to the professional grade. So if I know this, I will probably wait a little bit just so I can use that system completely, like just build through this build on the O4 instead of the O3. But whatever's done is done, and I will still say O3 is still pretty good enough for most of the daily use. And if you're interested of my O4 review, I do have a dedicated video for that, and links are going to be down below. So back to the topics. As we're using the same powertrain system on the BE25 recommended by Speedybee, which means we're using the exact AIO, exact motors, and the same frame, obviously, and basically at the bind and fly version of the BE25, the default setting, like the thing we just flashed into BetaFlight in the CLI tab, is going to give us the most optimized tuning. So no surprises, no overshooting or like jitteriness when you're just flying.
As for the performance wise, I would say this quad is one of the most agile Cinewhoops I have flown recently, so it handles freestyle tricks beautifully without feeling it lacking power. And later on you can see I'm doing a lot of like most of the tricks I know, I try to push it to the limit, but yeah, you can see it just does it pretty well. That said, I would still not recommend doing a lot of freestyle movement with this build as the frame is mostly plastic, especially the camera and antenna mount section. It could be easily damaged when you're crashing on hard surface. If you're not crashing on the grass, you're crashing on pavement, probably one crash is good enough to break it or something. So yeah, that's something to be aware. So to address this, the Speedybee BE25 has an upgrade kits that you can buy separately to like upgrade the original one. So it's gonna be replacing basically the camera part completely to metal. So it supposedly should be able to give you a more durable frame, but I would still say probably still not for hardcore bendo flying. So yeah, something that you just wanted to know, that this is a Cinewhoop, it's not a bendo machine anyway. So if you're interested of the metal upgrade kit, I also have another video like listed down below, so you can just go check it to see how to upgrade it. So overall, I would say I'm really liking this build a lot as it checks most of the marks that I'm looking for a Cinewhoop. It's ducted, lightweight, easy to carry, and has moderate noise level, films in 4K, performs well, like carries, like holds itself good in freestyle maneuvers, and has easily accessible plugs without needing to remove the frame for BetaFlight setups, which is often a pain in the butt for most of the Cinewhoops, and I can definitely foresee that I will be using this quad a lot in my future shoots on a go, because like if it's a light setup, this is easy to take with me. Alright, so basically that wraps us up this long build tutorial. If you wanted to check out the parts used in this video, the links are going to be at the description. So if you enjoy my content and want to support my work, please hit the like and subscribe button. As always, if you have any questions or comments, let me know, and happy flying, and bye for
now.